Okay, oh, there you go. Hopefully everybody can see me. My name is Kent. The channel is EOS San Diego. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about some of the myths surrounding Bitcoin, some of the truth surrounding Bitcoin. I think it's a relevant issue right now, a relevant topic. A lot of uncertainty in the economy, and of course we have a fiat currency that I think is completely worthless. In fact, it's a liability. Someone made a comment in one of my videos that he said, well, if you don't want your dollar bills, I'll take all the ones that you don't want. And of course, I'm not going to give them the dollar bills. They would take them, and I'm not going to give them because we both have a belief that they have value. What I'm saying is theoretically they have no value because they have nothing backing them. And fiat currency always goes to zero because nothing backs it and it's simply a piece of paper. So theoretically they're zero, even though today we still have a belief in them. And as long as you have a belief in them, you will carry that belief until you completely lose faith in it, and one day you will lose faith in it. So yeah, in the future they will be worthless, and there will be a day when these dollar bills that I have in my pocket, the person that's telling me that they want them will not want them, because they will not even want to bother coming and getting them, or they won't even bother storing them or having them because they're going to be a liability. Much like Weimar Germany, when they used wheelbarrows or whatever, however you want to say that, to take the money to buy a loaf of bread. That was a story that's been told many, many times, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. And if you are listening to a station or a channel like this, you probably have heard that too. So the fiat currency running by a centralized system, the Federal Reserve being a centralized system of private individuals, private people, private banks owning the Federal Reserve stock. We don't know who it is. It's never been audited, and we never will know who it is. And there's always a shell game about who it is. If you want to make an argument for conspiracy, that's probably your best argument, that we have a centralized private system, centralized private organization running our governmental currency, or controlling our governmental currency, interest rates, and all the other. So that's probably your best argument for conspiracies and people running the world, is that the Federal Reserve System. Who is it? Who are they? We don't know. In a world prior to the internet, it worked well. Now that we have the internet information, it doesn't work so well. So there's got to be a system better than that. And I think the digital currencies, and of course Bitcoin being that system, people just have to get a belief in the cryptocurrencies over the belief they have in their current dollar bills. Once that belief system is transferred over to the digital currencies will run the world. But they're going to run together for a while until people lose faith in the system. And as everybody is very stubborn, including people I know very well, this is going to go on for a while. But in the meantime, people are going to take a real beating. They're going to take a huge, huge beating with their money until they figure out that digital currencies are a true decentralized system that isn't owned by private individuals or organizations. It's digital, it's decentralized, it's run on the internet, and it's run in a public ledger, the blockchain, which I think is going to run everything. But the problem with Bitcoin is is limited by the number of transactions that it can do, because there's real world resources that are being expended by the solving of mathematical problems or algorithms, mathematical, that have to be solved in order to create the Bitcoin. So there's real world energies being used for these Bitcoin to be created. And because of that, it slows down the process. Since the process gets slowed down, then it's really tough to run the number of transactions it's going to take in order to be a viable currency for an incredible economy, incredible world economy. So Bitcoin itself will not run the world's economy. It will not run the world. It'll be a store of value, but it will not run the world. In order for there to be a currency to run the world, it's going to have to be a lot faster. And of course, we know there's a dedicated proof of stake, which is EOS, which is the cryptocurrency that we currently run our application on. There's Ethereum, but that's proof of work too, which means it's slowed down. There's a number of others. I won't go into them. There's a lot of them, but I believe there's going to be some way that there's going to be a proof of work protocol and a proof of stake, dedicated proof of stake, which is like an EOS or some sort of proof of stake protocol running some sort of currency that will run most of the transactions in the world. That's my belief, and that's what I think is going to happen. How that happens, I'm not sure, but that's the way it's going to happen. So in the future, the digital currency, whenever I hear anybody talking about the future and they're talking about governments, and they're talking about, the difference between, monetary policy in China and the difference in the monetary policy in the United States, I know that they're not understanding the digital currencies. I know they're not understanding digital world, because there will be no governments, there will be no China in the future, there'll be no United States in the future, there'll be no Canada in the future, there'll be no United Kingdom in the future. It's all going to be digital, and there's not going to be barriers, and there's not going to be countries, and there's not going to be trade wars, and there's not going to be any of this other stuff, because it's all been exposed and it doesn't work. The information age exposes all the faults and all the the inequities and all the problems with some sort of a system like that. So we will have some sort of digital currency running the world that has both proof of stake and proof of work as as its way of running the world, and that's the way it's going to work. Interestingly, of course, most people that probably watch this channel would know that, of course, Bitcoin was created by someone by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who Satoshi is or if Satoshi ever even existed. Obviously, in the early days of Bitcoin, it was extremely dangerous to create or use Bitcoin because governments were attacking it, and of course they were saying that it's being used to buy drugs and weapons and all kinds of things that could be dangerous or could be harmful to governments, and that's the reason why they tried to shut it down. And of course, a number of people that used it did go to prison and still are in prison. So in the early days, of course, Satoshi was anonymous, still is. We don't know who that person is, or that ever was a person, but we don't know. But in the early days, interacted with the person that created EOS, Dan Larimer. And of course, Dan said that he didn't think that it was doable because, didn't think it was doable. He said that he thought that there was a problem with Bitcoin because Bitcoin was running on a proof of work protocol, which means that it was limited in its scalability. And of course, Satoshi quickly just responds to Dan by saying, I'm not going to explain it to you. If you don't get it, I'm not going to explain it to you. What I think Satoshi meant when he said that to Dan was that Dan was failing to recognize the fact that there was a real world worked product that was backing Bitcoin, meaning the resources, the expending of energy, electricity to create a Bitcoin. Whereas I think Dan wasn't understanding that Satoshi knew that needed to be a part of it. And if you didn't have that real world part of the equation, that this couldn't be a true currency for the world. It couldn't be something that was completely, there wouldn't be anything backing it. It couldn't be just all digital. It had to be something that had some real world tangibility behind it. And that's what I think was the part that Dan was missing, the part that Satoshi said that it needed. And of course it has that, but it also keeps it from being scalable. And that's why I think Dan was correct too. Dan was correct with, we need scalability, but we also need something that has some connection to the real world, which is the energy that is needed to create a Bitcoin, which is why Bitcoin, I believe, is the perfect store of money, and it's a perfect means of transacting, and the perfect means of keeping track of transactions and not having everybody's interest aligned. As in, when your Bitcoin is created, the person that does the mining has no interest in the transactions, and because they're more interested in creating the Bitcoin than they are the actual transaction, so they don't have a vested interest. So the person creating the Bitcoin or the ledger is disassociated with the person that's actually using the ledger, or the person that's making the transaction, which makes the interests aligned, which means that there isn't somebody trying to game the system like there is right now with our current system. You have a centralized system that can game the system and use it and make it work it to their advantage. And in the future, I don't think that's the way it's going to be, because I think that there's going to have to be more transparency because of the world of information. Just like I use the analogy all the time, and I love the analogy that if you get pulled over by a police officer and you pull up your cell phone, and you can instantly live stream and get a few thousand people watching your interaction with the police officer is going to treat you differently than if you are just by yourself and you're exercising maybe some of your rights, like your Fourth Amendment protection, your Fifth Amendment protection, First Amendment protection, all these amendments that you have protections for, and you're trying to exercise those rights, and the police officer is trying to violate those rights. So if the police officer says he wants to search your car, and you say, no, I want to exercise my Fourth Amendment right, and he says, get out of your car, I'm going to search it anyway. If he's doing that without anybody else seeing that, he's violating your rights, your Fourth Amendment protection rights, and he's doing it and getting away with it. But if he has it live streamed and there's 3,000 people watching, 4,000 people, he knows he can't do it. Well, that's kind of what's going on right now. You have a system going on right now where you actually have people running the system that can violate it. But if the light is on it, then they can't violate it, and that's why I think it's going away. And I think that's why they know it's going away. And that's why I think that that's why there's a reset going on right now, because that way of system is going away. And it's not going to gold and silver. I mean, people still involved with gold and silver are not getting it either. I mean, it's like the typewriter. I mean, we don't use typewriters anymore. We don't use gold and silver to transact anymore because of the fact that gold and silver just isn't transactable in this new digital world of digital currency. Plus, the other thing too is, one or more of the values of Bitcoin and EOS and some of these others is on a public blockchain. Gold isn't on a public blockchain. We don't know who transacts in gold. It keeps a lot of things honest when you have it on a public blockchain, and it keeps a lot of things honest when it's decentralized. And that's the one thing I would say that you need to understand about this if you want to keep on in this digital currency learning experience that we're all going through right now, is you have to know decentralization. That's the most important part of this whole thing, is being decentralized, not centralized, not being centralized, being like the Federal Reserve, centralized being private. It's got to be available for everybody to know what's going on, and it's got to be on a public blockchain. It's got to be something where everybody sees it. That's decentralized, and that's the value of it. That's the digital world that we live in. That's what makes it so valuable. That allows us to interact with anybody in the world. Unlike if I have a Cougaran and I want to buy something from somebody in Australia, I'm gonna have to ship them the Cougaran. Or how do I get the Cougaran to them? And how do I know when they get the Cougaran they don't just stiff me and I don't get my product? There's just not a transactable thing. It's a store of value maybe, but not a transactable way. We need to have a transactable mechanism in place, and that's why I'm saying cryptocurrencies are the way to go. So there's a lot of things that, and I think that a lot of people that talk about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and so on and so forth, most of the people that are in the mainstream news, I believe, don't understand it. You're going to have to dig with somebody that's a little bit deeper into this, somebody that's out of the mainstream, to really get some good information. Because when I listen to people in the mainstream talk about Bitcoin, it's just so far from reality that it's hard for me to watch. You need to dig a little deeper. And go to a number of different people. But I do believe that if people aren't talking decentralized, then they are really, they're talking typewriter days. They're talking about the electric typewriter and not the computer. They haven't figured out that the typewriter left many, many years ago, like the slide rule did. Quick story, when I was a kid, I'm a little bit younger than slide rule days, but they were just on their out, leaving when I was starting school when I was a little tot. And I remember walking around and seeing the kids with the slide rules. They used to, I mean, it was like the status to show you how smart you were. You had to have a really cool slide rule. And of course, the cooler the slide rule, the looked like the smarter you were. So everybody tried to outdo themselves with the belts. It was the 70s and the big belts, 60s and 70s of the big belts. The days of the hippies and the tie-dyes and all that stuff. So the big belts and of course the slide rules, and the cooler the pouch, the cooler the slide rule holder, the cooler the smarter you were. So yeah, if you're going to live in a centralized world, you're in the slide rule days, my friend. You're in the days of the electric typewriter. You're not in the days of digital currencies. Decentralized is the only way this is going to move forward. It's got to be decentralized. If it's not decentralized, it's not going anywhere. And of course, like I say, they're going to compete against each other for a while. But eventually we're going to see which one wins out. And I already know which one's winning out. Just look at the price of Bitcoin and see where it was a few months ago and see where it is today. So anyway, I'm going to keep these videos going. And I'm going to keep talking about the monetary policies. And I'm going to keep talking about how this is the only way we're going to be going is in the world of digital currency. And to me, the three most important things in digital currency is scalability, decentralization, and of course the open ledger. I mean, that's the most important things about it. If you can start to understand those, build a framework around those three concepts, then you can start to understand digital currencies and start to forget about the centralized banking systems that we've lived under all these years, and start to question what you believe in. Start to question your faith in a piece of paper and who's backing that piece of paper and what that piece of paper represents, and how that piece of paper is being incredibly violated right now, and is being violated by the way that it's being printed. I mean, when you create trillions of something, you really violate it. I mean, you're just destroying it. You're beating it up. You're completely violating it to the point where it's worthless. Now, not that there hasn't been a positive side to that, because it's almost like, the sugar high, when people saw this money increase exponentially, and their assets all increased, they become addicted to it. So, when you, like I said the other day, when you could buy a house in the 1950s and 60s in Santa Monica, California for less than $100,000, and have that same house today be worth almost $4 million, there's an addiction to seeing that and see this whole. I have, even though it's been centralized, it's probably being manipulated and controlled, and is being run by maybe a nefarious organization. I still think there was some parts of it that have been good, and the parts of it that have been good is the allowing people to see an appreciation in assets that has created an incredible amount of drive, an incredible amount of innovation, and an incredible amount of just like, the sugar high giving you energy, and an incredible injection of energy into our economy that people wanted to create and do and make things happen because of how quickly everything started to rise. How money became easy to plentiful, how, when you bought a piece of property, it became worth more money, how when you, but the opposite side of it, it hurt businesses because businesses struggled to keep up with the inflation, and that's what's killed everybody now. And that's what's killing everybody right now, is the fact that this inflation rate's incredibly difficult for companies to maneuver and handle, especially in times of closure like we are today. So yeah, there's been a good side, there's been a bad side. Good side is that it's created a lot of innovation and pumped a lot of energy into the economy. The bad side of it is it's almost like a procrastination about what do we do about it. We're just going to keep bumping it down the road. We bumped it down the road with the financial crisis, and then we keep bumping it down the road and keep bumping it down the road. Now we've got this COVID, and now we've got more and more stimulus, and we've got trillions being printed. So let's just keep kicking it down the road, and people don't really know what's going on because they don't want to think about it. They just think, well, it's the U.S. dollar. It's always been good. It's going to be good forever, and we're just going to keep those and hold on to those, and we're not going to think about it. why they just keep procrastinating and kicking it down the road. So there was an injection of energy into the economy, but at the same time, it was short term, and it was going to run out, and there was a procrastination in dealing with it, and that's what we're living in right now. We're dealing with the procrastination of we're just going to print another $4 trillion, or we're going to just create some more stimulus, or the economy shut down like we are here in California. In fact, I think it's past curfew right now. We're just shut down, but what we'll do is we'll just create another package where we'll just pay people because we don't want them out spreading the COVID or the virus, so we'll just pay people to stay at home and we'll keep the economy shut down. That's just kicking the problem down the road. That's just throwing it down a little bit further down the road. At some point, you have to make a decision whether you want to keep going on that procrastination. Let's just forget about this today and deal with it tomorrow until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, till one day you wake up and you realize that your wealth has basically been completely taken from you through a currency that has absolutely no value. Somebody wrote me, Richard, hey, how you doing, Richard? He watches my videos, said to me that a smart contract currency that has an expiration date on it is theft. Well, also there's theft in printing money too. That's a theft too, because as money gets printed, more and more money gets printed, the money that you have in your pocket now gets worth less and less. That's a theft too. So both theft. There's a theft in expiring money by having a smart contract associated with it that it runs out of time after a certain period of time, and then also the printing of it. So anyway, more later. I got a video I want to make here very, very soon, and I've noticed a few subscribers have jumped on, so I appreciate that. Starting to pick up a little energy here. So appreciate the subscribers that have just recently joined. Challenged app is doing absolutely fantastic. We have a challenge now to try to get onto OKEX, which is one of the biggest exchanges in the world. We hope we get that challenge met. We've got a few hundred EOS or 100 EOS available for anybody who wants to try and take on that challenge. We've got a few people working on it. Hopefully we get listed. We have been on OKEX before. We were on OKEX before when the challenge token first came out. They allowed people to hold OKEX or CHL on the OKEX exchange, but then they didn't list it. And then as the market started to tumble, they didn't. They just took it down. So we're trying to get them to put it back up. So if we can get listed on one of the biggest exchanges in the world, it'll be huge, a huge boom for us. And then also being on CoinMarketCap, being on OKEX, and of course we're traded on Nudex right now. So the more of these exchanges we get on, the more powerful we become. And of course, the DApp itself, the application itself, is getting more and more uses, and more users, more and more followers, and it's growing every day. And that's a community. And I talked about a community on my last channel, on my last video. Communities are important to digital currencies as well. And that's what we need. We need communities running currencies that run the world. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.